What's changed between the iPhone 12 Pro and the iPhone 13 Pro? I'm going to let you know and walk through every single difference between these two devices. Welcome everybody to Appleinsider. It is Andrew here, and you can find me on Twitter at Andrew_OSU. And the iPhone 13 lineup is finally here. But what has changed between the iPhone 13 Pro and the iPhone 12 Pro? This year, there's quite a few notable differences on Apple's entry-level Pro phone. So let's go ahead and walk through all of the details. Let's start with the design of these two phones. With the iPhone 12 line, Apple introduced a whole new look and feel to the iPhone, going back to the flat sides along with the glass back. So with the iPhone 13, Apple really didn't reinvent the wheel. It kept the same rough design as the iPhone 12 Pro. But there are changes to note. First, the buttons on the sides. They've all been shifted. So if we look at the left side of the phone, our toggle and the volume buttons have all slid down just a little bit. We also saw the SIM card tray relocated. That's up a little bit. And if we flip things over, you can see that the power button, the side button, sleep wake toggle, whatever you want to call it, but it too has shifted down a little bit. That, coupled with the massive difference in the camera bumps, means that the iPhone 12 Pro cases will not fit the iPhone 13 Pro. The devices look very similar other than those small button movements and the newer camera module, but the iPhone 13 Pro is just a little bit thicker and heavier. It's actually 0.01 inches thicker than the iPhone 12 Pro, and it weighs a little bit more. The weight has gone from 6.66 ounces to 7.19 ounces. So it's a little heavier on the iPhone 13 Pro than the iPhone 12 Pro. Let's look at colors. This here is my iPhone 12 Pro in graphite. Both the iPhone 12 Pro and 13 Pro come in graphite, silver, and gold, but the iPhone 13 Pro comes in this new Sierra Blue, which replaces the Pacific Blue that was on the iPhone 12 Pro. Now let's take a closer look at these displays. Both of these phones have a 6.1-inch Super Retina XDR OLED display, but the iPhone 13 Pro has a Pro Motion display that can ramp up to 120 Hz. So that high refresh rate is going to come into play when you're scrolling through Safari, swiping between your home screens, or using third-party apps that have enabled these high refresh rate animations. Other than that, they're pretty darn similar. They have the same resolution of 2532 by 1170 and a pixel density of 460 ppi. They each have a 2,000,000:1 contrast ratio since they are both OLED displays. But Apple did make the new display a little bit brighter. It can now get up to 1,000 nits of typical brightness in daylight, whereas the iPhone 12 Pro could only go up to about 800 nits of average brightness in the daylight, though they both still have a peak brightness of 1,200 nits when you're watching back that HDR content. One other notable change on the display here is the notch. Both phones still support Face ID, but the notch has been changed and is now smaller, though a little taller, on the iPhone 13 Pro. You can see it doesn't really make a big difference to me one way or another. Apple doesn't really utilize this space anymore, but it is just a little shorter, a little narrower than it was in the past. Apple's also relocated the earpiece all the way to the top edge of the phone. But what about what's inside the phones? A lot of the stuff is similar here. They each come in 128, 256, and 512 gigabyte configurations, though the iPhone 13 Pro has a new 1 terabyte option available. They each support 5G, including the sub-6 gigahertz bandwidth as well as millimeter wave. They support Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.0. Battery has been improved, going from about 17 hours on video playback on the iPhone 12 to 22 hours on the iPhone 13 Pro, though that is for video playback. In early tests, it's looking to be about an hour and a half or so of extra usage time per day, which honestly is a great increase in actual day-to-day usage. Apple used the A14 Bionic Processor on the iPhone 12 Pro. The iPhone 13 Pro is employing Apple's brand new A15 Bionic Processor. Both the A14 and A15 are 6-core chips. They each have 2 high-performance cores and 4 high-efficiency cores. Though Apple's newer A15 Bionic processor is a bit faster, if we look at these Geekbench tests, you can see that the iPhone 13 Pro is scoring higher, though not by a huge margin. What is improved is that the iPhone 13 Pro has a 5-core GPU in the A15 Bionic processor compared to only a 4-core GPU in the A14 Bionic processor. So the iPhone 13 Pro is definitely going to score better in these benchmarks on graphics, like the Geekbench Compute benchmark. They're scoring better on the iPhone 13 Pro than the iPhone 12 Pro. You have that whole extra GPU coming in handy. Let's talk about those cameras. There are similarities here. Each of them have 3 cameras. The iPhone 13 Pro and the iPhone 12 Pro each have a 12 megapixel ultra-wide lens, a 12 megapixel wide-angle lens, and a 12 megapixel tele lens. But there were changes here. For instance, the tele lens on the iPhone 13 Pro is now a 3 times optical zoom lens, whereas the telecamera on the iPhone 12 Pro was only 2 times optical zoom. So you're going to get increased zoom on the iPhone 13 Pro. That also means you're going to get 15 times digital zoom, whereas the iPhone 12 Pro only had 10 times digital zoom, and you're going to get 3x digital zoom in videos as well on the iPhone 13 Pro. The wide-angle lens was improved, going from an f1.6 aperture to an f1.5 aperture. It's going to allow more light to come in, can be a faster shutter, and more natural background bokeh. The ultra-wide, though, was the biggest upgrade by far. The new ultra-wide lens went from an f2.4 aperture to an f1.8 aperture. This lens is so much faster than it was in the past. We're also seeing a lot less grain and noise in medium to low light photos. It's quicker to fire the shutter, which means less blur in those photos as well. That new ultra-wide lens also enables macro mode on the iPhone 13 Pro. Other features that we get on the iPhone 13 Pro that we don't get on the iPhone 12 Pro include photographic styles, which is kind of like stylized shooting when you're actually taking the photo and not a filter that you're applying afterward. We have Apple ProRes video that will be coming in a future update. Deep Fusion now works on all the lenses, including the upgraded ultra-wide lens. And we have Smart HDR4 from Smart HDR3. Shared features include night mode, portrait mode, night mode portraits, the LiDAR scanner, Deep Fusion in general, and they both support Apple ProRAW. Looking at video, I've already mentioned Apple ProRes video recording, which will be coming in a future update. We also have cinematic mode on the iPhone 13 Pro. Otherwise, both of them are capable of shooting 4K video at 60 frames per second in Dolby Vision HDR. Looking at those front-facing TrueDepth camera systems, they are both the same f2.2 12 megapixel cameras. They support pretty much the same everything. The only difference is on the iPhone 13 Pro, you get cinematic mode, ProRes support, and Smart HDR4. So that's it. Those are the changes between the iPhone 12 Pro and the iPhone 13 Pro. Let me know what you guys think over on Twitter at Andrew_OSU. Do you think it's worth upgrading from the 12 Pro to the 13 Pro? Let me know and stay tuned. We got more videos coming your way.